So far, we built some really simple but useful evil scripts. We built the execute command script, which basically executes any system command on any computer. And then on top of that, we built the execute and report, which basically executes a command first and reports the result when the command returns good results, to be used in cases where the command that you're executing is not useful unless you see the result. Now basically the execute and report was a combination of the execute script with a sendMail function that basically sends the result of the command to a specific email. So basically the sendMail function was a helper function that can be used in so many useful scenarios. Another helpful simple function is a download file function. As the name suggests, this function will basically download a file on the target computer, on the computer that executes this program. Now, why this is very useful is because, first of all, once we package it, and I'm going to cover that later on, it's going to work against all operating systems. And this is very useful because we can use it with the other simple scripts that we built and that we will build in the future. So basically, like I said, the execute and report was basically the execute program with the sendMail function. Now what we can do is we can use the download file function that we're going to build with the execute command that we built before, and that will give us a brand new program which will download the file and execute it on the system. So you can use that to download a keylogger, a virus, anything that you can think of really, and execute it on the target computer. Another really handy use, which we'll actually have an example of later on, is downloading a file, which might be a credential harvester, for example, then execute this file, so run this file on the computer, steal all the passwords saved on that computer, and then use the report function or the sendMail function to send the result to our email. So the result of this combination is going to be download, execute, and report. So you can see the pattern that I'm trying to build in here. We're going to be building small functions, and you'll be able to mix them and come up with very useful programs or evil files that you can use. Every few lectures, I'm going to be showing you some examples, but the possibilities are endless. You can build any type of script that you want or any type of evil file. So enough talking, let's go and build this download file function. Now in my Kali machine, I've already created a new project called download file, and I've already created a new Python file called download.py. So the first thing that I'm going to do is import a library that allows me to send requests to the internet. So the name of this library is requests. I'm going to include a link for this library in the resources of this lecture for you to have more details about it. And then we're going to create our function. So I'm going to define a new function and I'm going to call it download. And I'm going to make this function take a variable called URL, which is the link for the file that this function will download. Then inside this function, I'm going to create a new variable and I'm going to call this getRequest. And I'm going to make this equal to requests.getMyURL. So basically the library that I just imported, the requests, it has a function called get. And basically what this function does, it sends a get request for the URL that we pass, which is the URL that the function takes. And it returns the result of the get request to my variable, which is called getRequest. Now, if I pass a valid URL to this, the getRequest will actually have the response. And then before we actually use this response, I'm just going to print it on screen. So I'm going to print getRequest just to see what this response looks like. Now I've created the function, but I haven't called the function from my code. So we're going to call it in here. We're going to call my download function. And I'm going to give it a URL that I want to download. So you can use any file that you want. You just want to make sure that you give a direct link to this file. So what I mean by direct link is I'm going to show you an example. So I have my web browser here. I've already looked for my favorite car, which is a Nissan GTR. And if I just copy the image location and paste it in a new tab, you'll see that the end of this link is the name of the actual image. And when I load this, I'll see the image on its own. There is no ads, no HTML page, nothing. This is a direct link to the image. So this applies to whatever file you want to download, whether you want to download a PDF, an exe, a zip, or an image like I'm doing right here. So I'm going to go to my script and I'm literally just going to paste this in here. And basically what this will do, it'll call my download function with this URL. The get request now is going to call the get function from the request library with the URL that we just passed. And then we're going to print the get request, which is going to contain the response of this request. Which actually makes me think I should call this get response, not request, because this is going to be the response. So this will just make more sense. And let's go and run our program. Now I'm already in the working directory of my program. So I'm just going to do python download.py. And as you can see, it's printing a response for me on screen and it's showing me the response code, which is 200. And if you remember from previous lectures, the 200 HTTP response means that it's okay, the server was able to send me the response. But what we see in here is the object that was returned by the request.get. If we actually want to see the actual content of this response, so the stuff that we used to see in the row header when we were using Scapy, then we just have to do .content. So we're saying I want the get response .content. Now if we print this again, as you can see, we see all the gibberish that we used to see in the row header, and this is basically the binary content of the file itself. So now we're able to send the request and we're able to get the binary content of the file. Now the next step is to just write this content to a file so that we'll have the file downloaded in here. Keep in mind this is the working directory of the download.py file. So that's perfect for now. In the next lecture I'm going to show you how we can write files in general using Python, and then we'll see how we can use that to write the response that we just got so that we'll be able to download the file and write it on our system.